Hey guys, coming back from Vinyl, Season 1, Episode 2, yesterday once more, and I was obviously really looking forward to this episode. I really did love last week's pilot, as you guys know, pilot movie-length episode. I thought it was a really great way to start the show, and you guys know that I really didn't have many problems with it at all. I was really, in my opinion, still the most solid pilot I've watched so far this year, but I was really looking forward to this second episode, and I thought this was a really great follow-up. This episode definitely showed us more what the show is going to be. And I get that people probably might not have liked last week's episode because, it wasn't like the rest of the show and it was just a movie length and it just was tediously long. But I really thought it made sense for the episode to be as long as it is because this episode, we already know pretty much everything we need to know about most of the characters. So we don't need to so it gets away with a lot of unnecessary exposition. And we really can move forward with a story. That's exactly what this episode was. We got some really good flashbacks in this episode. We found out more about some of the secondary characters in this episode. But let's get into this episode because there's a lot that's going on this episode, and I'm really loving the show, I have to say. I really think this is a very solid show. Is it Leftovers? No, I'm going to say that right now. It's not The Leftovers, but it's still a really great show, and I am really enjoying it. So we start off, we see Richie is at the movies watching a karate film, but he's not watching it like you normally would by sitting in your seat. He's literally up in the screen doing all the moves, basically applies to how he's feeling. He's in front of the screen, snorting cocaine. Everyone's telling him to sit down and shut up as he motions through their moves, as he motions their moves. The usher asks what he's doing. He says he's watching a movie. The usher says he's been there all night, disturbing the other patrons, but Richie doesn't seem to care. The usher says to sit down and shut his trap and go back to the shelter, and he says he's no homeless man. The usher asks if he's not, who the fuck he is, and basically then see, by the way, guys, can I talk about how awesome the intro is for this show? I mean, that intro in the beginning, that was awesome. I loved it. It's on Sugar Daddy. Great way to start off. Just really, really awesome intro. Love seeing that. Seeing like something like right out of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That was really cool. So, Zach, Skip, and Scott, we get this really funny scene with them. They're with Polygram. They're basically doing whatever they can to stall them because they have no idea where Richie is. They're just, they're trying to keep him entertained. Zach's telling him this pointless story. They wonder where Richie is. Skip says he loves to make an entrance, and Scott asks them if they see any Broadway shows, recommends to them Grease and Pippin. And Cece then comes in, tells them that Richie won't answer on the apartment or the car phone and the house phone either. And Zach tells them that he's stuck in traffic and will be there shortly. He apologizes, assures he will be there soon. Then he leaves the meeting to take a break. And Scott asks Cece if she knew who the black guy was in Pippin. And Scott berates him, and Skip berates him for it because obviously he's asking her just because she's black, which, I mean, it was funny because the way that Skip reacted, I thought was pretty funny there. So Zach then calls Devon. She asked if Richie asked him a call because, of course, the last time that her and Richie spoke was not on good terms. She, of course, said, "Oh, my life is not enough for you," and he's surprised that he's not there because he figured, oh, he'd be with his wife. That's where he is, and she says that he went in a bender and tells him how he trashed the room, and he asks when the last time she saw him was. She says it was 9:30 or 10. He just drove off, and he says he's sure he's fine. And she says, of course he is. It's just everyone else around him that gets fucked, and you really see Devon's, how devastating Devon's life really is. And I think they really show that very well in this episode, that Devon is just not really happy at this moment in her life. She's kind of acting it just for Richie. She's putting on this face for Richie and the kids, and she's really not as happy as, we think she is. And I like seeing that. So, the kids ask for breakfast. Devon says she'll take them out for pancakes. Zach then finds pills prescribed for him and takes them. Now, I don't know what these pills are exactly, but we see him take them multiple times in this episode. And then we see Casper and Marvin meet up, then see Richie enter the elevator just right away like nothing is wrong. And Heather asks what happened to him. He says he's fit as a fiddle, ready for love. And he's acting like he's not late, like there's nothing wrong. And Cece is surprised to see him. He says he wants a coffee and then says to make it a Sanka. And he then goes into the meeting, and basically Scott asks what happened to him and if he was mugged, and he says that he was by God, but he took his wallet instead. Polygram notices that he's bleeding. Obviously, they're very concerned, and Richie says that they all are on the inside. Zach tells him that they have the contracts, and Richie asks if he heard what he just said. He says he doesn't get it. The building fell down, and he got up walking, and Scott asks what building. Skip tells him that the Mercer crash has been all over the news, and I love how ignorant and dense Scott is. Like, Scott's really not in tune with things. It's just a very fun, dynamic to see. You have Zach, Skip, and Scott. They're these, leaders of. They're the pioneers of like this huge record company that's kind of going away, and one of them has no idea what's going on. I mean, I think that's hilarious. So basically, Richie says he's not signing anything and tells them that they're not selling the company, and they tell him that they had an agreement and says the party of the third part is ipso facto pluribus unum, which is French, and they grab him and get him out. Zach tells them it's nothing personal, will only take 2 minutes. They take him away. He tells them he saw the dolls last night. They take him into another room and tells him to relax. And obviously, they're very confused because Richie told them that they're going to sell the company. But all of a sudden, it doesn't seem like he wants to sell this company. It just seems to be coming out of nowhere, and they don't really know why suddenly he doesn't want to sell this company because it was his idea in the first place. So obviously, Zach is questioning, what the fuck is going on. And Richie said he had a vision, call what he wants, a sign, an epiphany. And Skip says the New York Dolls is just a band that they passed on over a year ago. And Richie says he's not just talking about the dolls, which I like because we realize here he's not just talking about that kind of music. He's talking about rock and roll and the energy. Like the first time he heard it, it's fast, it's dirty, it smashes you over the head. And he's now fallen back in love with rock and roll. That's the thing. Richie's now kind of had a second birth. I mean, he's fallen in rock and roll is his passion, and rock and roll is what makes Richie Finestra Richie Finestra. That's who he's always been, and now he's really getting back to, being himself, and he wants that, and basically Zach says that he's already been smashed over the head. That's the problem here. Richie says his skills have transcended to the spiritual level. Zach says he understands he's high and asks him if he wants to go down that road again. Richie says he heard of the future of the company, and Scott says that they made a deal with Polygram, and it's an agreement to sell. Richie tells him to shut up. He says they started this company, the three of them, from nothing. Skip says now they're selling it, and Richie says they're not. Zach says he made commitments, financial commitments with serious ramifications for his whole family, and Richie says he's trying to talk to him about dreams, and he's worried about his mortgage, and Zach says it's because Chase Manhattan doesn't give a fuck about dreams, and Richie says he does. Zach asks since when last night he hovered coke up his nose, and Skip says he's a selfish prick. Richie says he's a hack too and tells him to go sell Buicks or aluminum sliding, and tells Zach that they'll cut costs and tighten their belts and it'll be okay. And I like that he's trying to give him this hope that, hey, just because we're selling this company doesn't mean this is the end. And Zach says that this deal is not just about him, and if he tanks this, he fucks all of them over, and tells him to just sign the thing, let them cash up on Albatross, and then do whatever he can go do whatever the fuck he wants. And Richie tells him he does all the talking. Zach says he's going to sign the contract, then go back to his wife, and Richie asks what, obviously Devon has to do with all this, and Zach tells him that he talked to her before and she's worried about him. Richie then punches Zach in the nose. He's really pissed, and he hits Scott because he's not getting through to them, and he hits him pretty hard. I mean, he kind of roars like he is there, like he is above them. It's very interesting the way that was done. He walks out of the room, goes back, and tells Polygram the deal is off. And yes, Richie is very high at this point. Like, he definitely is high on coke here. And basically, he walks out of the room, goes back, tells Polygram the deal is off, literally just tells him straight out. They ask him if this is how they do deals in America. He says he's trying to be polite, and they say that he's rude beyond measure, and he calls them Nazi pricks and tells them to leave. They say that they will hear from their attorneys. He tells A&R to go to the conference room in 30 minutes. Zach, Scott, and Skip oversee this take place, and Scott asks if they realize how screwed they are. Skip says it's like the lottery in fucking reverse, and that's a good way to look at it, definitely. That's kind of how it is. So Richie goes to Cece, she fixes up his eye. Julie comes in and asks if there's anything he should know, and asks what that was. Richie says it was just him exercising his rights as principal shareholder, and he's really realizing that he's, is the leader of this company, and he doesn't want this company to completely, go to shit. He wants his company to survive, and even if he has to, whatever he has to do, this company is what matters to him. And basically, Richie asks if that was not clear. Julie says it was very much, and then sees Richie snorting cocaine, asks him if they're doing this again. Richie says he is, then screams. He shows Julie some shirts to wear, and he tells him to wear Black Sabbath because it sends a stronger message as he's shooting up. And I like this scene because Richie just came out of like this regular shirt that he was wearing, and now again, he's putting on this rock shirt. Again, it really is like his second awakening, and basically he says it sends a stronger message, and basically Julie's shooting up, and then we see Devon and the kids are brought their pancakes, and Devon thinks back to how her and Richie met. Now, the flashbacks in this episode aren't about Richie and Lester. Now, I do think we're going to see more of Richie and Lester next week, but we took a back seat for that in this episode to see Devon and Richie, what their life used to be, because we knew, one, that Devon had a connection to Andy Warhol. We knew that that was going on. Two, that there's clearly something of a better life that Devon had, and we find out what that is here. Basically, at the time, Richie was dating Ingrid, and Devon was dating this artist Nico, and Richie was overhearing a band admiring how pure and real they are, and not the least bit with considering a mainstream following. And as for Devon's opinion, and she says she's biased since her and Nico, the other musician, did a play together, and they get to know each other a little bit, and they're bonding over Andy Griffith being the one to set it up because, he wants to meet her. It's pretty much love at first sight for these two. She takes pictures of him, then goes to the bathroom. Richie goes in, she slaps him, then they kiss, they quickly have sex, and I love this scene where Devon's looking at herself in the mirror in the present and just leaves, and she's just thinking back. She's thinking, this is what my life could still be. How did my life go in this direction? It's not the way it used to be, and it's just not exciting. That's the thing. And I don't think Devon is necessarily upset. She just misses the exciting part of it because her life right now is just not that exciting, and it's sad to see, really. So she drives back, and then we go to the flashback. She goes back to the club, and in the present images, and in the present imagines the singer sitting next to her, which was a really cool idea, singing the song Yesterday Once More, and gets distracted and realizes that she forgot her kids, literally left him in the restaurant. She runs back. The man asks him if they're her kids. They were sitting all alone. He was about to call the police. She says she just wanted to get gas, which the kids know is a lie. Very interesting. I don't know if she does this a lot, but the kids know this is a lie. And she gives the man money for the inconvenience and puts her kids in the car. And, she was trying to look back on the memory so much that she completely got distracted. And again, you can just tell that Devon is not really as in tune in things because she wishes her life was much different. So Richie goes into A&R with Julie, listens to the new music that Polygram wanted. He literally snaps the record in half because the music was shit, okay? It really was. It was like some jazzy thing that they were listening to, and he obviously is not going to support that. That's not the kind of music that he wants, and he tells him, in case they haven't heard, the deal with Polygram is off and they're not selling the company. Julie says it's a good thing, and Richie says it's not without its downsides, which Julie was hilarious this episode. Every time Julie tried to chime in, I was laughing my ass off. He was hilarious. I definitely think Julie's going to be a comic relief on this show. I really do like his character. He says that they'll be trimming their roster, and less artists means less need to kiss the asses of those artists, so 40% of their support staff will be let go, and they ask what happens to them, and he says they're all fired effective immediately, but they have 2 weeks to earn their jobs back. He says to bring him a new solo artist that the label can earn back. He wants new, fresh, fast, and exciting, and we get more of an idea here of really what he wants. Mitch asks how they can put a frame on talent in 2 weeks, and Richie just fires him. He fires this guy because he has no faith in him, and he just fires him, and if he's not going to be any of use to him, why is he there? So he just straight up fires him. And Richie tells him he just passed up a fortune because he believes in the company's future, tells him the time is now. He says it's privileged to do this job and to introduce the world to new music, to shape the culture. Marvin asks a question. Richie tells him not call him boss and call him by his first name because he wants this to be more personal. He doesn't want this to be professional. He wants to be more personal. And Marvin asks a question, and basically Marvin asks exactly what he's looking for, and Richie says it's all about the songs. If they can hum it, remember it by tomorrow. Does it make them want to call the radio station, find out who the band whose song they just played was? Because remember, this was back before we had things like Shazam, things like, Spotify. We didn't have that luxury back then, obviously, because it was the 70s. And I love the way the scene was done. He tells them to think back to the first time they made that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. The song that made them want to dance or fuck or go out and kick somebody's ass. And in 2 weeks, that's what he wants. And he's right. That's what a song should do. A song should make you feel a certain way. The best songs out there make you feel emotion, and they make you feel something. They either make you feel really good or really shitty. They all make you feel something, and I really do agree with what Richie is saying there. So Clark, of course, arrives late, and Richie asks if he just waltzes in whenever he feels like it. Clark says he just got off the red eye that he sent him to deliver a check to David Geffen. Richie leaves, and I love the scene where Clark's like, why is Mitchie crying? Clark is just so out of tune. I love it. It's really funny. Richie smokes. Jamie comes in, and he tells her that she's fine. She's not going to be fired. That's why he thinks that she's there, but she's not there. For that. She says that's not what she wanted to talk to him about, and she reminds him about the nasty bits, because obviously she really wants this band to get signed, as we know. She asked him what he thinks of the tape, and he said that there's something there. The mix was for shit, and they got some balls in their sound, and she asked what the next step is, and he says to have someone from A&R check them out. She says she was hoping that would be her. He says that she's just a secretary and a girl. She's not really much of anything because she really hasn't done much. But she says that she's the one that found those guys and brought them to him. And he says that she just, snatched the tape. But I like that he admits that he would not have listened to it had she not gotten in the tape before it got into his inbox. And he basically tells her to work with Julie, get the band ready, set up a showcase sometime next week. She thanks him. I like that little scene where she thought she wanted him to give him a blowjob. I thought that was pretty funny. And she promises him he won't be sorry. She gives him his drugs and then leaves. And Scott then says that Richie's out of control. Skip tells him to go for a walk. Jamie goes to Heather, who asks her what's up. And Jamie says that she just keeps smiling and looking at this album and says there's something she needs to tell her. Heather asks what it is. She says if she ever rats her out again to Richie, she'll kick her in the fucking cunt. So that's very interesting that Heather just ratted her out like that. Definitely you can tell that Jamie is very powerful, and I like seeing this powerful side of Jamie. Like I said, I really am loving her character, and I think they're doing a very good job with her. So Devon looks at the damage that Richie left from the previous night, takes pictures of the broken TV and the guitar inside it, which honestly looked like an album cover. It really did. She then gets a call from Sergeant Willis, and I'm like, oh shit, this is gonna be about what happened with Corzo and Buck Rogers' death. But then I thought, but that's not what this is about. It actually has nothing to do with that, which is very interesting. From the police department, asks if Richie is home. She says he's not available. Then they ask when the last time he was there. She asks if the car was impounded, and Willis says it was on the street, half a block from the collapse, and people are still unaccounted for. Wonders why Richie would be at the concert last night, because to her knowledge, he just left. He left. It wasn't, he wasn't happy, and he just left, and she didn't know where he went. She didn't even know about the crash. So obviously, she's worried sick at this point. She has every right to be really upset. So then we get this really interesting scene with Zach. We find out a lot more about Zach in this episode, and it shows why Zach is so in despair about them not selling this company. We see he goes to a restaurant for his daughter's bar mitzvah, and the plan of boxing him through the food, and he realizes it's going to cost more than their house, but decides to go for it anyway to please his daughter. And you can tell that between that and getting the company back and everything else, he's gonna run out of money, and he obviously is very worried about that, but because he loves his family so much, he wants to make them happy. But it's clear that him and his wife do not have a very good relationship. Every time we see him in this episode, they're yelling at each other. It does not seem good between them. So Richie's in the shower. Devon bangs on the door. She asks him what's the matter, and she says that she was afraid he was dead, and tells him that about the police, and he tells her that he's okay, and she's upset he didn't call or anything. He hugs her, tells her the whole day is just going to be great. He's just going through a lot, and tells her let him get dry. She asks about the cocaine and asks how long it's been going on, and he says it's just last night, and he's going to stop it. It's just the pressure, the birthday, and all the bullshit at work. And I like that he promised her, look, I'm going to try to stop this. But he does have an addiction problem. You can definitely tell. And he hears someone buzzing in, says that they should have called first, and then realizes that it's Detective Voehel, who we knew, of course, he had the card of. And obviously, Richie is terrified because he's thinking this is all about what happened with Buck Rogers, and that we know that that's one of the reasons why Richie was so scared, that he saw that thing on TV. And he says he's sorry for the intrusion, says he had work, and she tells him that he was injured in the building collapse downtown. He says he's a little shaken, and he tells Devon he needs to talk to Voehel alone. And of course, she wants to know what it's about, because a detective doesn't show up, on any day. There's obviously a reason why he's there, and he says he needs a few minutes. She says she wants to know what's going on. He tells him he's trembling. Richie says he's fine, and Voehel says he understands he's a partner of Morris Gold, and then realize that this is actually about Maury. So this is really interesting. We found out that Maury is an associate of Galasso's, as we know, and he says that he's not sure if he reads the New York Post, and he asks if the name Jimmy Porter rings a bell, low-level bookie and a loan shark, and someone who Maury owed a lot of money to. And he says that Porter was found murdered, and Richie's name was found in the address book. So Richie could be responsible for this. But Richie says he used to bet football on the weekends, and he asks if he knows anything about his relation with Maury, but Richie doesn't really know a thing. And I think Richie's just relieved to know has nothing really to do with him. He's just there to, answer some questions. And Voehel says it's looking that Galasso settled Maury's debt by putting 3 bullets into Porter's head, and asks him if he has anything that may be helpful, and gives him his card. He then asks if he was checked out by a doctor because his head is bleeding. Richie says he's going to do that. Voehel says he'll show himself out. Devon asks if he's alright. He says he needs a drink. She says he needs to go to a meeting, and I mean, it's a great scene. Her saying, look, you need help because he does have a serious problem, and she tells him to not do this. She asks him what's wrong, and you can tell that she really does want to help him. Now that she knows more what's going on, she does want to help, and he says he fucked up, he's a bad person. She assures him that he's not. She says to talk to her, and he says he just wants to sit, and cries in her lap, and It's just a really nice scene. The way that she's there for him, I just really good stuff there. And back in the past, we then see Devon and Richie are now taking drugs with an artist, Ernst, who is the rival of Andy Warhol, who we do get to see in this episode. He's making fun of how depressing his work is and how Richie thinks his work is very depressing. And Warhol comes up to them, who I gotta say, spot on actor right here. I mean, I know how Andy Warhol acts. I've heard of him before, definitely. And this was pretty spot on, I have to say. This was really good the way they handled this. Ingrid introduces him to Richie. Richie says it's great to meet him because of his work. Warhol says he doesn't do anything anymore and says that Ernst is a great artist, tells him that Richie finds his work depressing. Warhol tells Devon that she's looking pretty tonight. She says if he calls her that again, she will bite his nose off. Warhol asks Richie if she scares him again, if she scares him because she scares him, and she says because he wants her to sit there and keep her mouth shut, and Warhol says it's a screen test so he can make her a superstar. Richie says to watch them all get jealous, and she agrees to it. He says to do it for Richie and not for him, which I think is really good advice, because obviously she loves Richie. That's the reason she's doing this, and Warhol and Ondine then put her on film, and Warhol tells her that she has to be quiet. She gestures to Richie, who looks back and stays quiet, and it's a nice scene. I like seeing that, but again, it's just Devon remembering what her life could have been like, and now it's not like that anymore. And I think especially after that whole conversation with Ingrid, her saying, oh, I'm happy, we really see that she's not happy. She wants to pretend she's happy for the kids. So Julie and Jamie are then watching the Nasty Bits perform, and Julie just gets right in their face. I mean, he tells them basically everything that we thought when we heard the Nasty Bits, and he asks Kip what he did with the money his mom gave him for singing lessons. Julie wonders why this is the band Richie wants to see. Honestly, the way they're building up Julie, he could end up becoming my favorite character, because Julie just says what he feels. You know that thing in the back of your head that, like, tells you what not to say? Julie doesn't have that. He says however he feels, and I love seeing that. Jamie says he liked their demo. He asks if he heard it before or after he started using again and thinks that they're horrible. They can't play. He couldn't understand a word of their lyrics, and he can't believe that they're actually planning on signing this band because he thinks that they're shit. And Jamie sees that Richie thinks they have something. She does too. He says over 20 years in this job, it must be wrong. He goes to the band and tells them when there is a band, it's supposed to sound like they're all playing the same song at the same time. And he says what he just heard sound like five dogs with their cocks caught in a lawnmower. And again, he doesn't censor himself. He says how he feels, and Jamie says that she thinks it sounded great. Tells Jamie to get him a coffee and devil dogs, and the way that he treated her, I mean, the way that he just wants to do this on his own. He says it's his job to help them suck less, and as they're familiar with the Kinks, and tells them to learn all day and all night and play for Richie. That plus two originals. They wonder why that's on. He says because the vocals are in a range that Kip can handle, and it's got a chord structure that Monkey could play that's very easy. And Kip says that the Kinks are alright, but it's not who they are. Julie says who they are will not get signed. The band talks it over, and Kip agrees to it, and then we get probably the most shocking scene of the episode. I mean, this scene, I didn't know what was going to happen here, but goddamn, this was really hard to watch. Zach sleeps, and his wife asks him if he's alright. He says he can't breathe through his nose. She says to prop a pillow or something. He asks if the person that did this to him had insurance. And it's very interesting. He has not told her that it's Richie because he's ashamed of it being Richie. And you really see that he kind of is jealous of Richie. He kind of idolizes him because he doesn't have that life that Richie has. You know, if Richie loses money, he still has a shit ton of more. And, you know, him and Devon are just very fortunate because of that. And he's really not. And basically, we get this whole thing with them talking about like rates and things like that and their mortgage, and she asks if he has to go to the bathroom again. He says he couldn't sleep. She says to not make a lot of noise because their son David's playing Nathan Detroit in the camp sing-along tomorrow. He then walks outside into his car, and he turns on the engine, and I was thinking, okay, he's just gonna drive around for a while. But then he opens the bottle of pills, and then he slowly pours it into his hand. I'm like, oh shit, he's gonna attempt suicide, and it looks like that he's just about to overdose. But then puts all the pills back, realizes this is not the way out, that he's not just gonna off himself. He wants to turn things around, and if Richie can do this, he can too. But he then takes a wrench, hits his car with it many times, I think just to get out his frustration, because obviously he's very upset. He's got so much going on at the same time, and it really, I think, makes us sympathize more with Zach. We know what he's going through. We know the situation he's in. He does not have the best family life. He doesn't have a life like Richie's, and he really idolizes Richie because of that, and it's really sad, definitely. But I really did like that scene. I thought that was very powerful, and I really like the way that that was done. So, Zach, I don't know what's going to happen with him, but I really did feel bad for him. This got me to care about him even more than I already did. So Devon then kisses Richie, tells him to come to bed. She tries to have sex with him. He says he just wants to go to sleep. He's not even interested in having sex with her. I mean, he's that upset that he can't even have sex. So back in the past, Devon, Richie, Ernst, and Ingrid are at a party. Ingrid says that Devon can't drink because of the baby that she's having. She's pregnant in this, we realize. And Ernst tells him that they will move somewhere with rolling hills and ponds so that the child may fish. And Richie says he didn't fish. His kid isn't going to. And Devon says that she did since she lived in Virginia. Ingrid says she'll die without them there. And Devon says now when she walks down the street, she thinks she's going to get stabbed or something. Ernst admits it's a hostile environment. He can see it makes her feel vulnerable. Richie says they can move to the Upper East Side and says Ernst is right. They should get a pond. And Ingrid asks about his work. Devon says she can take the train in for auditions. And Richie says he's going to get her the biggest fucking house in America. And it's sad because she hasn't really gone back to it. She hasn't gone back. She's left, and now we know what's happened to her. And in the present, Devon is sleeping, wakes up, notices that Richie's gone, and the ending of this episode was very interesting, but it makes sense why it's going this direction. Richie's outside smoking, struts down the street. It looked like something at Saturday Night Fever, the way he was walking, honestly. He approaches the black community that Lester lives in, knocks on the door. Lester answers, obviously very shocked scene because, of course, they haven't spoken in a long time, and things are very rough between these two. But Richie tells him straight out they gotta talk. Lester lets him in. It's clearly about what's going on with Maury and that whole situation. And that's how the episode ends. And overall, guys, what an amazing episode. I really did love this episode overall. There's just so much to love about the show. And I know there are a lot of people that aren't loving this show, but there's so much to love that I can't dislike it. It's such a great show. I'm really loving it. And I can't really find any problems with it. I'm really loving where it's headed. But let's talk about Richie and Lester because we know that something happened between these two. I'm pretty sure we're going to get those flashbacks back next week because I was worried we were going to not see them. But after this, I'm like, okay, we're going to see more of that next week. But I like seeing this stuff with Devon. I mean, we really see that this is not what Devon's life is anymore. And is Devon really thinking about possibly going back to, going back to where she lived and going back to California, going back to where she lived with Ingrid and Warhol. Is she thinking of going back there? I really feel that's what Devon wants to do. She wants to pursue a career there, but she knows she can't because she has the kids. She has Richie. They can't really go on without her. They need her at home and things like that. So she's really contemplating what to do, and I like seeing that. We'll have to see what's going on with that. But this whole situation with Richie, I mean, obviously they're gonna come after him at some point. Someone's gonna find out about Buck Rogers' dead body, but this right now doesn't have to do with that. And I think it's interesting that this case that's going on really doesn't have to do with that at all. What it does have to do with is something that's been going on with Maury. There's something that we don't know, and we know that Lester was savagely beaten by Galasso and, his crew and everything, but does that have anything to do with this? I mean, there's definitely something going on that we don't know, and I'm very interested in seeing what's going on there because that's going to be very interesting. Zach, like I said, Zach very much idolizes Richie. I think he very much wishes that he had his life. And is Zach going to be able to turn things around? I mean, if Richie can, Zach can. But Zach just seems a lot more dire. Like, his situation is a lot more dangerous and a lot more complicated than Richie's. He's having financial problems. If he loses money, he's not getting it back, unlike Richie. And it's very sad to watch, definitely. I really do hope things turn out well for Zach. But just the way that things are headed, I don't really know if that's going to happen. We'll have to see what happens with that because that definitely is gonna be very sad, and I hope that he doesn't end up killing himself because the fact that he contemplated suicide already, if things get worse, I mean, who knows what he could do. And then Julie gonna be able to turn this band around? I love seeing Julie just like criticize the band. I think it was very funny, but I think this is gonna show him that they are capable and that they definitely do have a sound. They're just not aware of it yet. They're not really utilizing their talents, and they need to use it. And I think that Kip's gonna become stronger, definitely. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Is this gig gonna work? Is Richie, is this whole thing with Richie gonna work? Is he gonna like their music? We'll have to see what happens next week. That's definitely gonna be very interesting to see if he does like their music, what's going on there. I'm very interested in that whole situation. Richie's addiction. He clearly has a severe cocaine addiction and alcohol addiction. Is he going to get a meeting? Is he going to go to a meeting like Devon suggests? I do agree that is the best thing for him, but Richie really doesn't seem like he wants to do that he's just so motivated that he doesn't want to do that right now. So definitely it's very interesting what's going on with that. I'm very interested in seeing what's going on there as well. And then the company, who else are they going to get to sign? Because it can't just be the Nasty Bits. He wants a solo artist. Who are they going to get for that? We'll have to see. Is Richie going to get Lester to come back? Possibly. I mean, knowing that Lester's there, is he going to possibly think of the opportunity to get Lester back? I mean, I think it would kind of make sense if he did that. But him and Lester, we know, didn't get along very well and didn't really work together the last time that they tried. So we'll have to see what's going on there. But overall, guys, I'm really loving this show. I thought this was a very solid second episode. Definitely really great great stuff in this episode. I'm like I said, I'm really enjoying the show. I love the music in this episode. I love the cinematography, and I forgot to say, I love how in this show they'll cut to scenes of like songs that apply to their life or something that you're just remembering and things like that. It just adds their passion for music and really shows how deeply influenced the music really is in the show, and how they really try to show the show really is about the music when it really comes down to it. But anyway, guys, I'm gonna let you guys saw this episode. What do you think of the show in general? I will see you guys in my next show, which will be for Shameless, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.